It is often asserted that switching to green is somewhat elitist. It is for the rich countries, it is for the rich companies, it is for the rich consumers. But I would like to always highlight, and I quote here, the former EU Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans, who is the father of the European Green Deal. Frans Timmermans said, climate policy and also the just transition, it does not only concern the Tesla driving tofu eaters. So it concerns all of us. It concerns also developing countries, emerging economies. We all know that Indonesia and Vietnam have both been participating in the JETP, the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, in order to accelerate this transition and to reach their decarbonization targets, to mobilize public and private financing, all the while not losing sight of potentially adverse socioeconomic impacts and ethical issues. In a similar vein, the ASEAN energy ministers meeting in their statement last year in Indonesia also reiterated the importance of a people-centric approach that would focus, as I mentioned earlier, on the topic of affordability, the affordability aspect or the equity aspect of the so-called energy trilemma, which also seeks to reconcile energy security and environmental sustainability. And this directly links to the topic of our discussion today. What about also the private sector? What about the SMEs? The SMEs as the crucial drivers for ASEAN economies, as the front runners for innovation, the major contributors to jobs in many countries here. What might be barriers that they're facing in the energy transition? And what kind of support could we provide to ensure more equitable or inclusive economic participation? Just as an example, in broad terms, the 2024 ASEAN SME Policy Index, which was also just published, puts forward recommendations on 3 tools that are needed to make it easier for SMEs to participate in and to benefit from the just transition. Regulatory tools, financial tools, and information tools. Among others, reducing compliance burdens, but also incentivizing investments. There's also further orientation provided under the 2023 ASEAN Strategy for Carbon Neutrality. In other words, there's a lot of policy documents, there are a lot of strategies in ASEAN, no shortage of that as per usual, but the challenge is really that the devil lies in the detail and that the implementation and the intersection of different actions and mandates needs to be accounted for. So to round off the introduction opening from my side, what is then our expectation for this policy roundtable? What do we hope to gain out of it? We don't want to be all too technical, but we would like to seek or to arrive at a better understanding on 3 fronts. First, the importance of the just transition as a new imperative for ASEAN economies. Second, what is just? What does it mean? What are particularly also challenges and constraints faced by SMEs, by women entrepreneurs, possibly other vulnerable groups? And last but not least, how can regional actions, regional strategies, regional policies in ASEAN, both the ongoing ones as well as those for the post-2025 framework, facilitate this transition? And the latter, of course, means that we take a helicopter view. We look at the overall energy landscape in ASEAN, overarching directions in the policy. And we would like to also perhaps accentuate ways to bridge the varied economies, the varied energy profiles, and the varied development challenges we find across ASEAN member states. So finally, we hope we generate also some viable action points, some recommendations that could not only inform ASEAN's future work from the ground up, but perhaps also feed into our upcoming market talks and matchmaking activities we are hosting on ASEAN Access. If you don't know ASEAN Access, it's a virtual SME promotion platform. It's hosted and led or steered by the 10 ASEAN member states in a public-private scheme, and it is devoted to delivering resources that would help SMEs, particularly in the context of cross-border trade and internationalization. And last year, we facilitated already 2 events in cooperation with Italy on the clean tech sector, where both sides, ASEAN and Italy, explored business opportunities in the evolving renewable energy and EV markets. So that being said, we're very grateful, we're very excited to hear the diverse reflections and responses from our speakers. The speakers have very different professional backgrounds and will tell us, hopefully more expertly and eloquently than I can, about the various facets of the just transition. And I'm happy for this also to involve other colleagues from GIZ in Thailand and Vietnam. So to quote again Franz Timmermans, without the just transition, there will simply be no transition. And so with this, again, thank you to all the speakers in advance and wishing us all a fruitful discussion. Okay, back to either the moderator or...
I'll take this, Sita. Thank you so much for those opening words. So folks, my name is Dennis Wan. I'm the head of capital markets for CDP. CDP is an NGO, a not-for-profit international across the globe, which gathers the most environmental data, impact data on corporate activities, and then feeds it back into the ESG data system of the entire world. That by no means makes me an expert on this particular topic. In fact, that's probably why they invited me to moderate such a big topic. Just transition on ASEAN policy pathways and economic impacts. We are going to be trying to educate you, engage you, interest you, all of the folks who are watching right now, all of the ideas and recommendations that will be coming from our experts today will also be curated and fed back into the ASEAN authorities. So we're really trying to take on a massive topic here. So thanks for coming. On the matter of why we're meeting here, as the effects of climate change intensify, there's an urgent need for our economy to transition into more sustainable models to stay within the limits that the Paris Agreement agreed. I'm going to be using terms here which are which I didn't understand less than 2 years ago. And so I hope that at the end of this particular round table, we will have delved into those terms as well. The idea of a transition, a change from one thing to another, and it needing to be just. Just is actually derived from the word justice. It's not like the use of the word just as in only. It means a transition that is justified and fair to everybody. And that's what people mean when they say no one must be left behind in this process of changing our world economy from using carbon to not using carbon. That's decarbonization and protecting the environment. So the folks who are going to be affected most by climate change need to be front and center of what we're talking about. And in order to bring everybody out from a dirty economy to a clean economy, then we need to move away from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. We still have a long way ahead of us. 2023 data showed that ASEAN countries are still very heavily dependent on fossil fuels, the burning of coal. About 75% of the energy mix of ASEAN emits carbon. So the energy transition is crucial for several reasons. By changing our energy mix, it will mitigate climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and pollution. And that's absolutely necessary, not just to limit global warming, but to protect nature. Additionally, it will improve and enhance our energy security so that we're not dependent on one thing that could go wrong. It will stabilize prices. It will reduce dependence on fossil fuels, which are, after all, a finite resource. At the same time, we'll be able to drive economic growth, creating new job opportunities, fostering innovation, attracting investment in green technologies. This will all improve public health, reducing air pollution, healthier communities, lower healthcare costs. The prize is immense, but the challenge of getting there after 150 years of relying on fossil fuels and now being on a very short timeline of having to fix this is immense. And in this transition, the role of small and medium enterprises is critical. SMEs. We'll be talking about how they are the overwhelming majority of companies in ASEAN. 97% of all companies in ASEAN are SMEs. 85% of all employment is driven by SMEs. They are key supply chain actors who contribute to value-added activities, innovation, growth across both urban and rural areas. However, they face massive problems that bigger corporate entities don't, because due to their size, they might lack financial support. They lack the expertise. They lack the ability to recruit people who understand the depth of the problem. They are also very threatened themselves by climate change, because they might be dealing with local suppliers themselves. Market uncertainty, regulatory pressures affect SMEs because they're far less capable of dealing with them. So a just transition needs to also look at SMEs and then provide structural support to make sure that they are all brought along with the 85% of jobs that they support. So in order to try and tackle something this huge, energy transition, the just transition, SME impacts, fairness, we've brought together an excellent panel of experts today for you. I'm going to, at this point, go round the table and actually ask each of them to give themselves their introduction. 1 minute. Let's keep that short. Who they are, who they represent, what they would like you to take away from today. And in no particular order, I will go to Kelvin Tan first. He is the Managing Director and Head of Sustainability and Government Affairs for ASEAN at HSBC. If you could give a little introduction, Kelvin.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for dialing in. It's an honor to address all of you, and thank you, Dennis, for the introduction. So, as Dennis said, I'm Kelvin Tan. I'm from HSBC. I look after sustainability and government affairs for ASEAN, based in Singapore. Right. My role actually is to see how we can actually assist our clients, and to work alongside with all the regulators, also to see how we can actually have a transition in terms of a transition pathway that, as we talk about, that's all inclusive, right? As the word just means that, any transition needs to be inclusive. And I look forward to having this discussion with all of you and to sharing some of the ideas that what financial institutions are actually now doing to assist in that front. Thank you very much.
Thanks for representing the finance industry here. Next, I'd like Dicky to introduce himself. Dicky is head of the governing board of Yayasan Mitra Hijau. Dicky?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Dicky Edwin Hidarto, and I represent the Yayasan Mitra Hijau. We are the NGO that works in renewable energy and energy transition, as well as low carbon development area. And currently we are trying to develop what's so-called just energy transition implementation among the local stakeholders in East Kalimantan and South Sumatra. And I think it is very important for us, not just talking in the central government, but also we try to push the local people, the local SME, as well as local communities around the coal mines to work together for the just energy transition. So we are starting in East Kalimantan and South Sumatra, and our project was funded by the IKI German. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Next, I'd like an introduction from Sherman Cruz. He is the Executive Director and Chief of the Center of Engaged Foresight.
Hi, Dennis. Good morning. I'm Sherman Cruz. I'm currently the Chief Futures of the Center for Engaged Foresight and the founder of the Global South Futures community. I've been working with multiple sectors, from investments to trade and retail to health. And I've seen and heard, many insights, from people in communities about, their different, ways of knowing about what is just. And particularly when it comes to the energy sector and linking that to the conversation about justice, is that we should look beyond the utility of what is just, particularly when looking at, accessing and making sure that, as you'd mentioned, no one is left behind, but rather perhaps accentuating the value of relationality and why we're doing this in the first place.
Thank you, Sherman. Next, I would like to have an introduction from Dr. Ambia Abdullah of the ASEAN Center for Energy.
Thank you, Dennis. Hello all. My name is Ambia Abdullah. I'm currently senior researcher at the ASEAN Center for Energy. And thank you so much for inviting us to this important event. We hope that we could share together the knowledge and also explore another opportunity for working together on energy transition in ASEAN. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, then from the IESR and in charge of analyzing environmental policy is Ilham Rizkan Fareza Surya.
Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ilham. I work for IESR, Indonesian-based NGO/think tank. So we produce reports and we conducted events, but we also advocate all layers of society and government to move, to imagine how can we move towards a low carbon society? How can we decarbonize basically high emitting sectors like industry, transportation, and SMEs in particular falls under our industrial subsector that we are advocating. So yeah, I'm happy to share one of two about our studies on that. Thank you.
Thanks there. I was just getting prepared here to introduce Sasha because I'm going to take the opportunity to practice my 40 years out of date German here. Sasha is with the GIZ, which is the Deutsche Gesellschaft für International Zusammenarbeit. Sasha.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. It was not too bad. Yeah, my name is Sasha. I'm with GIZ, and thanks to Dennis, the ASEAN Economic Forum, and my fellow GIZ colleagues for inviting me here. Usually I would sort of oversee projects where we would focus on supporting our government partners with policy developments in the field of energy as well as also energy planning. But as of late or some years ago, we also started looking into the issue of just energy transition. So we do have projects, and I think one colleague of mine is also on the call, where we specifically focus on the just transition in coal regions throughout ASEAN. Very much looking forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Next up, we have someone else from GIZ, but GIZ Vietnam, and I will not torture you with mein Deutsche again. Giang Tran, who looks after social inclusion.
Hello, Dennis, and hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to join the roundtable, important roundtable today. My name is Giang. I'm the component manager of the social inclusion component of the macroeconomic reform program of the GIZ Vietnam. And today I'm very pleased to be here with you, and I have the opportunity to share with you about the just issue, the challenge of the vulnerable group, vulnerable SME, especially the one owned by women during the transition in Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you. And to round off our introductions, then our kind hosts today from the ASEAN Economic Forum, the CEO, Ashish Kapari.
Dennis, thank you. Morning, everyone. I'm Ashish Kapari. I represent the ASEAN Economic Forum. We are a think, do tank, if I may just emphasize on that. I've also learned the term do recently. So what we do is we are an autonomous, independent, socio-economic development organization that works very closely with ASEAN and ASEAN Charter to deliver outcome-based programs. And we are sector agnostic, so we work across some 8 of the 17 SDG goals, and try to build programs that can be outcome based. I want to thank Dennis for taking the load off me to moderate this session today. Dennis, I think you've done an excellent job here, and thank you everybody for participating. It's an honor to host you all as the co-organizer of this session. And thank you, GIZ, for your support. That would be all from my side. Thank you.
Great. We'll hear more from everybody later, but now you know the depth of the expertise that we have here. We're going to try and extract some important learning points out of today. We're going to explore the challenges to the just transition, the ethical considerations of what we're up against. We're going to look for solutions and see what we can feed into ASEAN policy plans. And overall, through this entire conversation, we're going to understand the significance of the energy transition, and we're going to explore regional perspectives. As you saw from those introductions, we have people from all over ASEAN, from all spheres of expertise to contribute today. In order to do as much as that is it requires, then we're going to do this in 4 sections. Firstly, we will dive into trying to extract the challenges and ethical considerations. We're going to deep dive into SMEs because someone's going to mention SMEs. That 97% of companies, 85% of the employment. Again, we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about non-policy solutions, and then we'll talk about policy ideas that we could have. And at this point, the introductions are done. We're going to dive into the expertise now, and I'm going to turn to Dr. Ambia for my first question. And that is, can you tell us, with your level of expertise and your background, what role does ASEAN play in shaping the energy transition? And how can regional collaboration accelerate the adoption of renewable energy and energy efficiency across all of ASEAN's member states?
Thank you, Dennis. And as you all of us may already aware, because ASEAN Center for Energy is governed or represent 10 ASEAN member states in energy sector. So we follow the mandate from the ASEAN Governing Council in direction of the energy sector in ASEAN. As Sita also mentioned at the beginning of the introduction of this event, in last AMEM in Laos, we announced the ASEAN Energy Outlook 8th edition. That's ASEAN Energy Outlook is one of the main reference on the future direction of the energy in ASEAN. So under the ASEAN Energy Outlook, we also found that the current achievement of the ASEAN in terms of the RE share in TPES, we aim under the APEC phase 2, as mentioned by Sita also, we aim to achieve around 23% of the RE share in of the TPS, but based on our latest data in 2022, we found that the region achieved around 16%. So there is a gap in meeting 2025 target of the RE share. And also in terms of the energy efficiency, we found that based on the 2020 data, we already achieved about 25% of the energy intensity reduction. But the RE share in TPS is definitely we need to work harder on achieving this target. And then if we look on the statement mentioned or announced by joint ministerial statement on energy meeting in Laos, the meeting mentioned about the importance of the enhancing collectivity and resilience in strengthening the ASEAN cooperation. So this word has two main objectives. One is we will explore further any opportunity in addressing the present and the upcoming challenge in achieving the energy security, affordability, sustainability in the region. And the second one, we also aim to further or strengthen the regional effort or action. So in this term, regional cooperation would be very important in the coming decade. In another one, I would like to share another important objective that the region also would aim in the coming 5 years, which is under the APEC Phase 2, starting from 2026 until 2030. Because now we are at the end of the APEC Phase 2, like 2025, and we are in formulating the next 5 years regional cooperation target or objective in energy sector. So I would like to mention the next 5 years we aim to advance regional cooperation in ensuring energy security and accelerating decarbonization for a just energy transition in the region. So with this one, this will be one of the main reference we will have for the region energy sector in the next 5 years. So what does it mean? If we look on the region progress on the renewable energy, for example, actually the region already has made some significant progress. But according to several studies that ASEAN Center for Energy also has conducted for exploring what kind of the present challenge that the region face in terms of the RE investment, we found one, as also mentioned by Sita, that one is, and also Dennis also pointed out, is financial availability. We under another study, for example, we have ongoing project on the ASEAN Power Grid Interconnection. ASEAN Power Grid Interconnection is not only the project aim to have the enhancing the renewable energy, but also is training the interconnectivity and energy security in ASEAN. So under this one particular project or one particular aspect of the energy security in ASEAN, we projected the region would need around 212 billion US dollar from 2018 to 2040. So this huge money is only for that ASEAN Power Grid only, yeah. But if we look on the financial need for the RE, the region would need a lot of more financial resources. That's we also aim the regional cooperation in terms of the financial resources. And also the second one, I would like to also mention about another important statement under the joint ministerial meeting on energy in Laos. That's the meeting aim mentioned specifically related to the RE, that's the region would like to accelerate the achievement of regional target of the RE by maximizing the potential in baseload technology. It is particularly mentioned this kind of the technology in that joint statement. One is geothermal and hydropower. The second one is solar and wind. The third, hydrogen and its derivative. And the fourth, bioethanol and biodiesel blending with a particular target to be deployed in the transport sector, because the region aim to reduce the oil dependency utilization in the transport sector. And another one is exploring emerging technology such as like sustainable aviation, fuel, green technology, and others. So with this kind of the specifically mentioned technology, the region would also need the support related on the technical capacity, because the region still in the some of the region in still at the early stage of the some specific, especially on the emerging technology. The support we aim is also related to the technical support, and knowledge sharing would be also needed, and best practice from the developed country or developed partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ambia. A lot of challenges spelled out there, and actually some ideas as to where to go from here. Let me go to Dickie. So, Dickie, you represent, and in your role, you work with many actors, governments, private sectors, NGOs. What do you define as the biggest challenges in aligning carbon reduction activities and RE policies with just transition, especially in your geography?
Yeah, if we talk about just energy transition or just transition or any new words in energy, it is very difficult to be explained. It is very difficult to be understandable for the local people, for the local government, and even for the central government. So only very limited person knows what is just energy transition in the central government. Not only Indonesia, I noticed also in almost every Asian countries, only the people who work in energy knows exactly what is just energy transition. But if we talk about beyond this energy sectors, people who work in energy sector, it is very difficult to make them understand what is just energy transition. And we found this in our works in East Kalimantan and also in South Sumatra. If we talk about just energy transition to the local government and to private sectors, and also to SMEs, and even for the local communities, it is very, very difficult. How can you explain about just energy transition if your home is located exactly on the top of the coal mines? How can you explain about how then to use the renewable energy if your area, if your regency or your provinces very dependent on coal? So in Indonesia, there are some regencies in Indonesia, or we call it kabupaten, and city or kota in Indonesia that are very, very dependent on coal. For example, if we talk about regency Kutai Kartanegara, is big regency, about 100 times Singapore area. The area is 100 times of Singapore, for example. This is a regency in Indonesia, but the dependency on the coal is more than 75%. This economic dependency, so meaning that their local income coming from the coal mines, coming from the coal business, and also pasir, and also Brau Timur, and also Brau. There are a lot of regencies in Indonesia that are very dependent on the coal. And if coal price goes down, so they can directly feel the goes down of their income. It is very difficult now because Indonesia, as you know, that we have a lot of coal area and coal mines. And in the past 3 and 4 years after the Russia-Ukraine crisis, they got windfall profit from the coal from 60 to 70 dollars per ton, goes to 400 tons per US dollar per tons. So you can imagine 5 times and 6 times of the price difference in here. And of course, at that time, they got a lot of money, and the biggest money still come to the companies, but the local government got monies, and then local people also, they got some small monies, but it is still money because they call it direct coal benefit. And then currently the coal price goes down to 120, 130, still almost 2 times before 2022, before the war between the Russia and Ukraine. So we are facing this situation on the field. So we are facing the real situation. We cannot talk just energy transition at the level of central government, to the level of the communities. So how then we can translate these words into the real words? If you ask them to, okay, please change to the renewable energy, or please try to use the solar rooftop. Common people doesn't have any money. Of course, surrounding the coal, they got money, but they are still very poor. As usual, they don't have any money. For the local government, they also still very difficult to understand. So our strategy is how then to make from the local government, top local government, it means the governor, to the local communities, understand there are still some choices, still some options, not only the coal economy that they can use. So we are trying to give them some knowledge in what is the very next very basic steps. For example, like if we talk about just energy transition, we always forget the first step of just energy transition is energy saving or energy efficiency. We always talk about the renewable energy. We always talk about how to use the biomass, how to use the solar, but we always forget that in the household, they don't have any capacity to do that. Even the SMEs, they don't have any capacity, they don't have any knowledge, they don't have any money. How then the government can support this? The answer is they cannot support it. If then they are not bring things into their daily life. So we are trying to bring these terms of the just energy transition to their daily life. How then they can save the energy. How then they can use instead of the gas or the electricity, they also can use their surrounding biomass. But of course, it is very difficult to do that because they also already have they already enjoy the use of cooking oil, and then the use of the gas. It is very difficult then to switch it to the biomass. They call it this ancient technology, the biomass. So again, that we can start from the energy saving, from the hemat energy, we call it, or energy efficiency, and then goes to another step. Not directly goes to the renewable energy. And for the level of the knowledge itself, the local government, they don't know what is the just energy transition. So we need to reiterate them. So that's the problem.
Thank you, Dickie. Thank you. I think you're drawing out the need for a lot of learning there, and that's something that we're going to be doing. You're talking about also people in poverty. This is a level below even just SMEs.
Yes.
And I think what I was thinking whilst you were speaking there was in my introduction talking about like the structural support that was needed. Let's move on to talk about gender inequality and the impact on women. And I'm going to move here to Giang from GIZ Vietnam and ask her, what are the most significant barriers that women-led businesses in Vietnam face during the just transition?
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Really, I really want to, first of all, I want to share Dickie's, sharing, who already touched base on a number of the just issue in the energy transition in other country, and we are very similar to Vietnam. In Vietnam, the just issue, the vulnerable group, we are working on our project focus to work on multiple, on the people with disability, on the elderly, on the people, the female women, and also people living in the poverty area, the ethnic minority. However, today, let me only share with you the snapshot about the women-led business in the energy sector in Vietnam and their challenge. Before going to that, let me give you some background information about the SME and the women-owned business in Vietnam. Then I will talk about the women entrepreneurs in the energy sector and the challenge they are facing with. In Vietnam, the SME plays an important role in the economic growth because they account for 98% of the total enterprise. And among those, women own 20% only, and 80% are owned by men. However, the number of women-owned business increased in the period from 2012 to 2022 for at least 2% per year. So that average growth rate is more than higher than the average growth rate of the business sector. That make Vietnam as one of the most favorable market for women-owned entrepreneurs among the ASEAN countries. So hopefully an applause for the well-doing of my country. And however, among those SME owned by women in Vietnam, mainly 69, nearly 70% of them are micro and small size count for 28%. Medium size count only for 3%, and very few large size SME owned by women that can lead the supply chains. And 37% of them operating in the education and training sector. 31% of them working on the accommodation and food service sector, and 28% working on the financial banking and insurance sector. So very few, you can see the other sector of 4%, including the business owned by women in the other sector like the energy, for example. Now, let me share with you about the women-owned SME in the energy sector in Vietnam. In 2022 2020 data, there is about 1,400 women-owned business led by women in the electricity sector. So that account for 24% among nearly 6,000 enterprise operating in the electricity sector. We have 20 local wide energy developer, 15 developer in the solar energy, but mainly they are led by men. Only less than 1/4 that led by women. And again, the business, the enterprise in the energy sector in Vietnam owned by women are mainly micro enterprise, so it counts for 94% of those, followed by a small enterprise account for like 5.6%, I think, and the medium and large enterprise in the energy sector in Vietnam owned by women only count for 0.21%. However, the female who are leading the energy enterprise in Vietnam, you have a quite highly education background. 70% have the university degree, and about 6% that have the postgraduate degree. So that as a snapshot about the women-owned business in energy sector and SME in Vietnam. Now, let me share with you the challenge that those women are facing with. I can name them out, 4 of them out. Number 1, that is a challenge that are faced by most of the SME. It is the limited access to the financial resource. Even the women-led business in enterprise in Vietnam, women entrepreneurs had a big difficulty in having the access to the financial resource, and even when the support given, they rarely can have successfully against the financial support. Why? And sadly, they have let the women entrepreneur have less opportunity to have the financial support from the bank or financial institutes than men. And also maybe because of the most of the women-owned enterprise are small micro size, so that makes them very not attractive to the bank, to the investment and the credit. So the lack of the financial support really make hinder the ability of the women entrepreneur in operating their business, in developing, grow their business, and invest more in the green sector or in the energy sector. Why the bank doesn't give the financial support to the women-owned business in the energy sector in Vietnam? Maybe because of the energy products, it is a it's a novelty of the deployed technology that the financing the energy products for clean energy business, for example, usually associates with the unproven efficiency of the business model, and the longer time take for to break, even compared to the other business. And in Vietnam, there are like 5 out of 27 banks having the policy provide the guarantee or the support to renewable energy enterprise. Kevin, headed BC, had the policy to support green credit for rooftop solar power project. Other banks have the policy to finance solar power building and installing rooftop. However, the bank and the financial institution does not show the big interest in the women-led business in Vietnam, because I have to say there is a prejudice against women entrepreneurs. The thinking about the belief about women-owned business have a small capital, little capital, often don't have the good credit history, and have a limit. The women entrepreneur has a limit management ability, and this business usually expect the low interest rate, but need a lot of support and advice. That is a prejudice against the women entrepreneur in Vietnam. The gender bias also come, on reflect to be reflect on the women capacity in technology, in the technical field, and in the leadership. And they really undervalue the women ability, and assuming that men is a better leader, and men can better lead make the enterprise performs better than women. So women entrepreneur often are just as unable to choose the technology, or to have the timely access to the installation or maintenance of the new technology. Yeah, and that gender bias and the inequality and discrimination of the women in owning the land, and in having the inherited from their parent, the ancestor, for having the access to use as a deposit, or the collateral for the borrowing the capital, or having the access to the financial service. Those really limit the women entrepreneurs autonomy in and their opportunity to invest into the green energy sector. And the bank is encouraged to provide the policy to support women entrepreneur and women-led SME, but that is not a mandatory in the regulation in Vietnam. That is only the voluntary policy made by the bank, and is not compulsory by law. And even honestly saying, there is very few incentive from the government on the tax, or on the motivating the bank and financial institute for their product to support the women owned SME in the energy sector in Vietnam. Number 2 challenge now I want to say is this a real limited capacity of women entrepreneurs in the technical area in STEAM, and the unrepresented, they are unrepresentative in the management and leadership position of the energy sector. Yeah, very, you know, maybe that may be popular, similar in other ASEAN country, that they still a lower proportion rate of girls and women doing the technical and STEM qualification. That make, you know, having less women can having the good capacity in terms of STEM and technology for leading their energy sector, energy enterprise. And even those, you know, like I said before, the number of women entrepreneurs having the high education in Vietnam are very, very high. You know, 70% of them are having the university and degree, and 6% having the post degree. Yeah, post graduation degree. And okay, so the renewable energy, the new energy are very new knowledge to many people, including women entrepreneurs, and also the minority of them in having the decision-making position in the energy sector, in the new technology enterprise, makes them underrepresented. Only 0.01% of the management and leadership position in the energy sector in Vietnam occupied by women. So, you know, the need of women entrepreneurs, the voice, and also the opportunity for them to develop themselves and to develop their business are underrepresented. Number 3 challenges is the shortage of information to support the new energy business. Because of the minority, again, the women-owned business in the energy sector are not representative in the accelerator programs, and they have a limited access to the networking, to the market. And for the women, the survey in Vietnam showing that they tend to be either based on their friendship or family, or concentrate on their local area. And the lack of information making them not aware of the accelerated program or the supported program, or even the supported regulation by the government. So they have more difficulty in running their own business, and also to update with the new technology, or to share with the best practice, or develop themselves, or having the access to the international market. Now, the last but very important challenges that I have to mention is the balance between the dual role, balance of the dual role between family and business. Here, I want to reflect 2 different aspects. One, that is the women's choice. You know, the energy project and energy factory are usually located in the remote area. That is far, that the infrastructure and the family care service are usually not very well placed. So women entrepreneurs in the energy sector have to work remotely from their family for a long time, and that makes them not being able to do the family care work that, you know, in Vietnam, I can say maybe also similar to other ASEAN countries, women, this is also our choice, often prefer job and that close to home, flexible to balance the work and family responsibility. So the women entrepreneur also in Vietnam also prioritize, a lot of them may prioritize the taking care of their children and family rather than the business or the opportunity for them to networking, to even develop themselves. A survey data showing that women entrepreneur in Vietnam, of the micro enterprise in Vietnam, spend 7 hours on unpaid care work, but spend only 6.5 hours on business. While men spend the same amount of time on their job, but less than 3 hours on unpaid care work. So women entrepreneurs in Vietnam spend more time for the family and care work than the business work. And also, as a natural being, women entrepreneur, many of them are interrupted by their career development, business development by the due to the child delivery or the child care barrier. So that is a barrier very popular in most of the sector, and including the energy sector in Vietnam. Now, on the other hand,
thank you, Giang. These are excellent points, and those four excellent challenges that you've really brought out there. I'm sure that our note takers have captured all of these things. We will get more to the solutions later, but thank you for that. I need to move on to Ilham here, and if I might pose you the question of tell me about financial and technical barriers in adopting renewable energy.
Yeah, sure. So just echoing to what Pak Diki said earlier, just like the bigger industries, SMEs are getting their electricity mainly from the state utilities, electricity company. So which mainly is still focused on mainly consists of fossil fuels. So it's not like these industries can cherry pick which electricity sources it come from, cleaner or dirtier. So before venturing on how accessible RE is for SMEs, we need to address what their role in transition is, because like what Sita said earlier, that decarbonizing is no longer an option, but it has to be done. So willingly or not, they have to decarbonize their emissions, because it's one of the pathways to achieve our net zero commitment. And according to several studies, SMEs in Indonesia emits around 400 million tons of CO2 annually, around 500 from activities like energy consumptions, waste management, and etc. So how can we transition them towards net zero? They have to decarbonize, willingly or not, and whether they have the financial capability or not, they have to do that. If they cannot, the government have to assist in some ways or another. So what we have identified is that this SMEs don't even know that there is a environmental protection certification, for example. So they don't know it, and they don't own it, this certifications, and the law actually doesn't obligate them to have the certifications, unlike the bigger industries. So what we propose for now at this stage is sectoral clustering. And what we mean by sectoral clustering is it's the process of grouping based on a certain similarities or connections. In this aspect, sector-based clustering is so it's how it's SMEs are grouped based on how on what sectors they are working at. It's basically what the namesake suggested. So why we encourage sector-based clustering? It's because we can help them identify the amount of energy consumption and the emissions generated for certain sectors, and then we can come up with a clear overview of how energy is generated, and then how hopefully we can come up with a solution which aspect is generating more emissions. For example, in the manufacturing sector of SMEs, we can identify that gasoline produce is the primary contributor of carbon emissions, and then in trading it's maybe also gasoline. So what we can learn is we have to change the gasoline. We have to produce a better, higher quality gasolines. So it's not exactly a renewable energy yet, but it's lower emitting energy. So what we propose is making this lower emitting energy, like higher quality gasoline, for example, is more accessible. And in Indonesia, we spend billions for energy subsidy and compensation. So the government is actually doing their part to make SMEs thrive with this compensations and subsidies. But the thing is, we encourage government to only subsidize cleaner, higher quality or lesser emitting fuels. Maybe it's not yet renewable energy, but it's been done basically. But we wanted more. We want government to be more ambitious to incentivize renewable energy but it's not. It shouldn't be on SMEs sacrifice. So it should be we're talking about the state utilities if we want to incentivize renewable energy. So it's completely different discussion. But for now, I suggest that government can help SMEs to cluster and to see which part of their activities emits the most emission. I think that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Ilham. So you brought up SMEs there, which is a perfect segue into the next section of deep dive challenges. We've heard all sorts of challenges now, captured a lot of good thinking there. I'm going to Sasha now and your work on supporting SMEs on the energy transition. Can you tell me more?
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. As Chia said, we do have a long-standing track record of supporting SMEs in general, aiming mainly at promoting economic growth and job creation more generally. But with the energy transition, I do believe that this adds sort of an extra layer of complexity. It was interesting to hear what also previous speakers had mentioned in terms of the just energy transition. I don't think the idea of it is difficult to understand, meaning that it is clear that at some point, sooner or later, or ideally even yesterday, we sort of should deviate from fossil fuels, meaning from coal and gas, to more renewable sources of energy, and also plan our energy system accordingly. But the meaning of just energy transition, I think this is very difficult then to translate. And Dicky made, I think, very good points, and I do not need to add sort of on all the challenges and difficulties that he outlined, with which I fully agree. I would just like to flag that also, Dennis, you mentioned if 97% of companies in ASEAN are SMEs, then it's not only a one-way street of sort of us telling SMEs that they need to be included in the energy transition, and this needs to sort of happen in a just manner, but also that, well, it's a two-way street in that if we sort of have this common goal of working towards a more sustainable future when it comes to our energy production and generation, that we do need these SMEs to also take part in it and also transform. Having said that, I'd be happy to share an example from our work. We do have one activity supporting a coal region, coal mining region here in Thailand, and coal does not have the same relevance here in Thailand as it does have in Indonesia, as it was outlined by Dicky. But it's also clear here in Thailand that the government will need to phase out of coal. Coal production or coal mining, as well as also generation from coal, started in the late 70s when IGA, so that's the state utility here in Thailand, meaning the company responsible for providing electricity to the country. They started this in the late 70s, with now the whole district more or less being reliant on sort of the coal mining activities there. It's clear that coal will run out by 2050 the latest in Myanmar. So this is the region in North Thailand. But the capacity would already have next year, meaning it does come already with drastic and significant changes to the electricity production very soon. Actually, EGA, so the state utility in charge, is very well aware of it, and we work very closely together with them when it comes to the implications to the region, because also for the local government and the state utility, there's an interest of keeping economic activities going and also looking into economic diversification. They started a process where they would look into a just energy transition roadmap, meaning how, with a decrease in terms of economic activity on coal, what this could then mean also for local communities. And it's not sort of a top-down process, in that there's a plan outlined by the central or local government as well as the state utility, but there are discussion formats. There's local formats where they would also gather community and community leaders to first of all sort of raise awareness of the issue, but also hear and gather the inputs to have this reflected in this transition roadmap. They also started together with our support on a green job training. So the idea for the whole region, or for Myanmar, is to become a smart city, and as part of that, there are ideas to diversify economic activities. And these first job trainings were focusing on solar PVs, meaning to train technicians on how to take care of solar panels, how to clean them, but also how to sort of operate them. Other than that, there's ideas for starting with agri-PV, meaning you would have your agricultural fields, but then you would also put solar cells on top of it, meaning you have a dual use of this land, generating electricity from renewable sources, while at the same time also, having crops grown underneath. And in all of these, so the local communities as well as local SMEs are closely involved. These are just a few examples. So if you're interested, happy to share more, but for now, also happy to give back to you, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very enlightening, Sasha. Finance has been mentioned many times, Kelvin. The mic is yours. Please tell me about how HSBC might be helping SMEs in ASEAN's economy.
Yeah, sure, Dennis. Thank you very much. I don't think so finance has the silver bullet, but we as in finance, the industry, view ourselves as enablers, right? Ultimately. Yeah, and one of the things that actually, from the SME's perspective, in particular in terms of transitioning, is actually to create the awareness. I think we need to debunk the myth, that SMEs is too difficult a challenge for them to be along this side of the journey. Or some people just feel that, with so much that's going on in terms of their priorities and all that, perhaps transitioning and tackling climate change is not something that's a priority for SMEs. However, I think it's very important to actually emphasize that it is important because it's about future-proofing the SMEs business. And it all comes down to the whole supply chain effect of things. At the moment, you would say that, yes, the SMEs are not required to perhaps at this stage, disclose, their emissions, carbon emissions, and so on and so forth. However, if you look at the whole supply chain, ultimately, it's the large corporates that are now putting a lot of pressures along the supply chain. One of the things that HSBC actually, and alongside, I'm sure other financial institutions are looking at, is to see how we can actually decarbonize the supply chain. So whether you talk about, the energy sector, or even in, if you're in the garment industry, right, or in the F&B industry and all that, if, your principal buyers are actually requiring and embarking on this journey of decarbonization, it will filter down, I'm not too sure you're familiar with the Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emission criteria, but typically the SMEs would have actually contribute a huge part of the supply chain, which is technically the Scope 3 criteria. So what we do as financial institutions, one is to create awareness to kind of help them in terms of looking to see how best they can actually report. And then it's to your point, CDP is also one of those things that can help in the SME in terms of making the ease of reporting, carbon emissions, right? But more importantly, obviously, is to enable them, right? And I'll just give you one example that we are doing. This is a example that actually we're working, Dennis, with CDP. I think you're fully aware of this, which is the Walmart transaction. So, we embarked with Walmart now more than 5 years ago to say that, if you're in a supplier of Walmart, and you're part of the SMEs, if you meet the certain standards and criteria of Walmart's own decarbonization plans, as a financial institutions, we will give incentives in terms of trade financing to these your supplier. Now, it's an unusual way of looking at it because if you look at the large, buyers, whether it's Walmart or your H&B or whatever it is, right? The large one, Procter & Gamble and all that. You can use the carrot or stick approach of things. The stick approach is that if you don't meet my criteria, you cannot be my supplier anymore. But in the Walmart's case, we are also using the carrot approach to say that if you do meet my criteria, as a bank, HSBC will come in and actually provide favorable source of funding. And we are now seeing a lot of financial institutions doing this. We provide specific SME green loans, for example, in Singapore, or we have launched also, in Hong Kong and in certain parts of in Asia, what we call the sustainability improvement loans, where we actually work with EcoVadis, another company that looks at sustainability data and intelligence and rating, to say that, if you come on board this and you sign up for these things, if you meet certain criteria and show improvement along the way of your journey, the financing, will be reduced. All this actually is important to actually provide the incentives for SMEs to think about it, at least to say that, how can I get through this journey in terms of, going through the transition journey together. There's a lot of other examples, but I'm going to stop here first because I think that, if anybody is interested, please feel free to reach out to HSBC or to the ASEAN Economic Forum, after this, and we can have provide you more details of these. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you so much for that. We too can talk for hours on any one of these aspects, but let's talk about digital transformation now. And we go to the CEO of the ASEAN Economic Forum. I know you have that double hat of being a tech entrepreneur as well. Tell me, Ashish, what role do you see digital transformation playing in helping SMEs become more resilient and adaptable to the challenges of the energy transition in ASEAN?
Thanks, Dennis. I want to take the liberty of presenting maybe just one or two slides. These are some interesting slides that I'd seen, and I think they'll set a context for what I'm going to be addressing after this. So let me figure out how to do this. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to try to see how I can share my slides. Okay. So, okay, here I am. I need access to sharing a slide. Just one slide is what I need to share. Riza, can I get access?
I just made you a co-host, so I think you should be able to do that now.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Allow to share screen. Bear with me 1 second if I'm just going on this. Yep. Can you see my screen now, all of you?
It's black right now.
Now?
It's still black. Oh no, I see it. Colorful now. Two powerful forces.
Okay. All right. So Now, these are two interesting things that are happening as we talk, So there is the democratization of the open networks. When I say open networks, we talk about digitalization, e-commerce, cross-border trade, and all of that increasing because, markets are now becoming available. People are now talking to one another more than before. The trade is being facilitated. That's one part of it. The second part is the commoditization of generative AI. Now, these are very interesting, and I'm going to get off the slides now. Okay, so these are very interesting things that are happening as we talk, and these are happening at a micro level because we see all of it happening in front of us. At the macroeconomic level, there are some other things that are happening, and I'll just quickly touch them in order of priority. So there are 6 prominent forces that we are looking at today. We've got de-dollarization, we've got population dynamics, we've got AI, we've got retreat from globalization, we've got rise of global conflicts. There are 2 major conflicts, about 30 smaller conflicts going around the world, and then at the last is the climate change, that everybody talks about. From an AI perspective, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on this, is that an AI data center today needs an average of 100 gigawatt hours annually, which essentially means it requires the power that can be used to to support an entire city's power. Now, cities around the world account to 70% of the CO2 emission. In North America, that's probably a little bit more. It's about 80%, depending on how you define the boundaries of cities. Now, a coal-powered data center, emits around 820 grams of CO2 per kilowatt power, which means 82,000 metric tons of CO2 annually, which, if you translate it into number of cars, it's 18,000 cars going up and down for a year. That's what it is. Now, as per Goldman Sachs, the requirement for data centers is going to increase by 160%. So, while we are using technology here, and we talk about technology and digital transformation to support decarbonization, what we are also doing is we are actually supporting carbonization here. So unless we find alternate ways of energy, we are treading very dangerous grounds here. Now, I'm going to come and answer some of the question that Dennis asked me. But my last point that I want to make is that, great transformations are embraced very quickly by the humans, but the trade-offs are seen at a later stage. Now, we've seen this in the first industrial revolution, where we had mass production. There were financial economic gains, but then it took 50 years after that to make the corrections on, pollutions, health hazards, soil contaminations, and so on and so forth. We also saw another correction in the 1980s and 90s with the financial markets and Lehman Brothers going down, which resulted in an over-regulation of the financial sector. Now, the reason I made these points is because we are talking about digital transformation, but we have to be careful in how we use the various tools available, including AI, and the aftermath of the decisions that that we are taking today. We have to take them into consideration. Okay, so coming to ASEAN. Now, there are 2 things I want to talk about ASEAN before I touch the MSME sector. Firstly, ASEAN has the world's largest natural carbon sink. We account to about 36% of the global carbon sink here. But fossil fuels still account to almost 85% of the energy mix. Now, unlike the developed nations, the emerging countries in ASEAN, the GDP and CO2 emissions are in tandem. And due to the reliance of fossil fuels as dependable and affordable energy sources, we have seen that between 2005 to 2022, energy consumption and greenhouse gas emission has grown from 3 to 4%, 3 and 4% respectively, surpassing the average 1% of the global north. What does just transition mean for ASEAN? And this is, I think, very important. We have to move away from fossil fuels, which all the earlier speakers have spoken about. How are we going to use digital transition for that? Is the question that I need to answer. Now, digital transition, I think, is not just important for MSMEs, but it's important for everybody, because that's the only way to go. The MSMEs are a backbone of any economy. You know, we've spoken about 97% organizations being MSME, 85% jobs being provided by MSMEs, which literally translates into 70 million MSMEs, which account to 180 million jobs. How are we going to transition to digital transformation and use digital means for the MSMEs to benefit? The first and foremost, I think, is the question of how many of these MSMEs are actually transitioned into digital. So that's the question. Now, 76% of MSMEs use mobile phones. So I'm assuming that 77% of them have the means to be transitioned. How they will transition is, first and foremost, I think one needs to look at from the MSME perspective. We need to firstly transform them to be able to use digital, and then use digital for financial gains. For that, we need capacity building. Now, once we have done that, the capacity building has been done, then the digital skills can be used for multiple things. Now, first, we've spoken about capacity. So capacity comes from digital upskilling. To digitally upskill, you need to ensure that they have access to the infrastructure, which could be mobile phones, which could be broadband, PCs. But in ASEAN MSMEs, it's mostly mobile driven. Second thing, cost-effective access to financing and resources. This would happen only if the MSMEs have been digitally enabled. Then we can look at giving them the various financial tools. So digital platforms that connect SMEs to green financing options. I think Kevin touched a little bit on that, such as loans, grants for renewable energy adoption. Digital platforms make it easier for SMEs to apply for financing, track eligibility, manage funds for renewable energy projects. The third thing is digital transformation will help them with real-time energy monitoring. So IoT-based, IoT-enabled sensors and energy management softwares can monitor the energy consumption real-time. Now, this can help them identify inefficiencies, reduce waste. They can also have predictive maintenance for failures that happen, minimizing downtime to ensure there are no disruptions. The fourth thing that digital transformation brings on is optimizing renewable energy integration with the smart grid and demand response solutions. So by connecting to smart grids, SMEs can adapt their energy use response to fluctuating supply and demand, which is essentially in integrating renewable energy sources that may have variable outputs. Now, example, solar and wind. For example, digital tools can automate shift in energy intensive tasks to times when renewable energy supplies is higher, and it can optimize costs and usage then. Energy storage. So when you're storing energy on site, and if that allows you to pass some of that back to the grid. Data-driven decision making is another one. So you can create scenario modeling using digital tools. Flexibility and resilient business planning. So digital transformation helps people work flexibly. So we've seen in during COVID, people were allowed to work from home. So MSMEs can also use this to benefit. I think the other thing is supply chain digitization. So which is partly what Kevin touched. Very briefly, I mean, from an MSME perspective, you save paper, you save courier cost, you digitize your other tools. I mean, that's where it comes from. And the last point I think here, which is very important, is the MSMEs can also participate in the digital energy ecosystems where, you have blockchain based energy trading platforms which allow businesses to trade surplus renewable energy. So there are multiple incentives by governments. I mean, I think there's an example of South Africa where there was a study that was conducted, and I'm not sure whether it was Bloomberg or whether it was McKinsey. But what they had seen was that they had seen a surge in usage of solar panels by the MSMEs. The government anticipated it to be about 10%, but when I think it was Bloomberg which did sort of a parallel survey, and they had commissioned drones to do this, they realized that it was much more than that. It was about 19%. And the reason for that was that there was a big incentive for the MSMEs to switch to solar power because the power from the grid was not reliable due to load shedding, and all these MSMEs had their cash registers which had to be powered, and so there was this incentive for them to uh, move to solar power. I mean, and there are other examples that I think we could use. Dennis, that would all be from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Boom, boom. Oops, I was off on mute there. Thank you. Fascinating, Ashish. We're moving on to the solutions part of the agenda now, and I'm actually going to go to Sherman. Sherman, tell me a little bit about foresight planning and scenario building tools.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I was listening, to our colleagues here, about how they frame the issue, particularly when it comes to just transition, small, medium enterprises, and the mechanisms that are available to you. And it appears to me that the issue is pretty quite really like convoluted. It's intricate. And if you are an outsider, it might probably be quite difficult to follow, in the sense that it is might not necessarily be complicated as such, but it is indeed wicked, right? Like transitioning, from an energy source, would require a lot of issues that needs to be dealt with, from systemic issue to industry, to community, to gender, to culture, to economy. Now, what does foresight offer when it comes to enabling people to have some sort of a conversation that benefits primarily the stakeholders and not from an expert driven perspective? What foresight usually offer and do is that it enables a particular stakeholder, a community or an organization or a network, to gain clarity on the wickedness of a particular issue. I've seen in what we've mentioned have hit several areas when it comes to the forces of change that might influence impact the way we enact not just envision what a just transition look like, probably in the context of the ASEAN, because we've seen this, we know this, that energy is a different realm, right? And it's not just about policy per se, among other things, but it is in fact indeed a geopolitical issue as well. So foresight is an approach that enables us to just have a conversation of what are the things that are pretty quite compelling to us, right? Like if you put, for example, different stakeholders in a room, and let's just figure out, like, let's say if this just transition, a transition to renewable energy, assuming that we could do it in the next 10, 15, 25, or even generations or 2 generations for different geographies, right? The scale of the future and how we respond in terms of its temporality, how fast we are in actually like achieving whatever transition we anticipate or try to imagine, is that would depend on the capability, at many levels of a particular nation state. And that would be more even, challenging for small, medium enterprises, that would normally like bear the brunt of the socio-economic impacts if a transition isn't just, or even if we frame it as just, but then the mechanism or the strategy might not necessarily be achieving, what is just, as far as, experience is concerned, could be troubling for many small and medium enterprises. So, foresight is not rocket science. In the last 30 years, we've been trying to make, these technical methods and tools in a way that we democratize the process and mechanism so that, people, stakeholders, non-experts can actually participate in a policy conversation such as this. Like, for example, if we try to frame our conversation in the context of foresight, is that, we might be asking some things that enables us to create some narratives about what just transition is. Like, what does it mean, to live and do business in multiple future worlds, in a just transition energy scenario? Let's just say, let's put some temporality in it, like, for example, in the year 2030 or 2040. What does it mean, to live in a day, in a life, to do business, and in multiple worlds? What I see here is that the narrative that I currently see, at least from my own perspective, is that we have a view of a just transition model that is framed and driven and informed by continued economic growth, right? But then what will it look like? What would just transition look like if we look at it in the context of a discipline scenario, right? Wherein, markets are managed, and disciplined in a way that to reduce, the negative consequences and impact of transitioning from a coal-powered, energy sector into a renewable energy sector. Of course, we know this, that, there are transitional risks when we try to enact and implement the innovations that we see, to ensure, the clean energy agenda, for the next 30 and 40 years, of course, with the environment and nature in mind. Like, for example, in a foresight approach, let's just say we use the alternative archetype futures method. Like, the alternative archetype futures method as a methodology or as a tool, it can enable you to see what just transition looks like for specific communities and cohorts, right? It doesn't have to be like from a global perspective as well. You can do that at multiple levels, from a regional perspective point of view, wherein you do have different nation states and stakeholders and communities, imagining what it looks like or what it means like to transitionally, to have a just transition to energy sector, and seeing what the implications are as far as small, medium enterprises concerned. Like, for example, I'm going to give you quick examples just to play with it. Like, for example, in a continued growth economic scenario, which is the trajectory for a just transition, would require you some incremental, gradual adjustment, at different levels, from systems to mechanisms to policies and structures, including incentives and community-based innovation programs, right? So in a continued growth model, what I see here is that we are trying to see what just looks like when we slowly integrate renewable energy into existing systems. That supports and amplifies the capacity of small, medium enterprises to participate and, be embedded, integrated into a renewable energy powered nation or industry. What would that mean, right? You can look at it from a justice focused perspective. Like, indicators, you could see the indicators right away, right? Like disruption to livelihoods, creating like some sort of incremental pathways, because we see that, small, medium enterprises are not cooperatives and companies, right? They are not large scale enterprises that has the mechanism to do risk management, innovation strategy. some small medium enterprises does not have the power or the capability to actually do that, right? Like what would the disruption look like when it comes to their roles in the economy, including does this amplify or disable them to support their own communities? Most of the small medium enterprises, if you come to think about it, in the Philippines, is that they exist in rural communities and low urban, poverty-driven locations, right? So a just energy transition in a continued economic growth model would implicitly tell us that it must be stable. It need not have to be disrupted, for small, medium enterprises. If we can ensure stability in transitioning to a renewable energy, that would be wonderful. That could mean just for everyone involved. Now, I'm not gonna give some four alternative future scenario. I just would like to jump in, to what Ashish mentioned when it comes to the digital transformation context, right? Because transformation is apparently inherently and explicitly digital. And that would mean for small, medium enterprises who are not into this conversation, for example, is that it could mean that, this could be radical for them. If you're telling me now, to shift into renewable energy, solutions to my small, medium business and enterprise, what would that look like? Given the fact that I'm using traditional energy sources, my dependency is state power, right? State operated type of energy infrastructure and distribution and production system. It could mean radically for me as far as I'm concerned, right? And then how would I embrace, technological and social innovation when it comes to digital transformation that enables me to be stable in a just transition scenario? But probably it could also mean beyond stability as well, because transformation from a radical point of view, could mean a lot of things, right? Because it's a new vision of the future anyway. So that would probably require, reframing, rethinking small, medium enterprises in the context of digital transformation. It could mean providing or perhaps repurposing what SMEs looks like in a transformation scenario. It could mean, introducing and amplifying the capability to embed and enable themselves to adopt cutting-edge technologies, right? And among other things. Now, from a justice-focused perspective, in the context of, for example, using foresight now, contextualizing it from the perspective of justice, it means, redesigning and rethinking, reframing what small, medium enterprises look like, because of course, change, societal, at least in this context, or economic change doesn't happen overnight. It happens probably for some countries, it could happen in 10 years. For others, could happen for 30 years. For some others, could be longer than that, right? So, but then what does it mean from a justice perspective focus is that in a digital transformation scenario, we are giving the SMEs themselves and the communities where they exist control and access to renewable sources, right? Would that mean, for example, currencies, for example, right? The banks in a traditional setup would be at the middle of all these types of transactions. But then when you try to shift, banking as a form of service, is that you might not need the banks per se to intervene in banking services or whatever currency transaction you might have. Now, in the digital transformation scenario, that would also imply, impact, unintended consequences as far as the system is concerned, right? Would we require the system to always intervene, as far as SMEs transitioning to renewable energy sources is concerned? So, SMEs, we've seen this, they have been always, in the past, historically marginalized when it comes to the context of continued economic growth, right? Especially when there are disasters, right? The supports that if you try to look at it, its history is that it hasn't really been that evident, right? Like in the last 30 years, I've seen it. My mom was into small, medium enterprises as well, and she couldn't get the support that she needs, to expand her business because the bank wouldn't allow it, because at those during those period in the 1990s, the mechanism to enable them, to actually like expand wasn't there yet. So, the benefit of digital transformation in a just transition scenario, probably I would say in the context of what is preferred is that it must be fair and that it needs to be inclusive. So that is the kind of conversation, that you can probably generate and explore, including not just the intended consequences, but those wild cards even, and the unintended consequences that might be invisible to us now, in imagining what the future of a renewable energy landscape looks like for small, medium enterprises.
Thank you, Sherman. That was inspirational. Right. Going back to the original objectives of this roundtable, we have undoubtedly emphasized the significance of the energy transition, and we've heard a lot of regional perspectives. We spent most of the time drawing out challenges and the ethical problems, and much of this is going to be curated and then fed back to the important stakeholders. We've started on ideas and policy ideas. We didn't have enough time to get all of the ideas that is clearly in the deep expertise of all of our participants here. But I am now going to give everyone the opportunity to say a closing statement. They're all preparing in the background right now. You have 45 seconds or 60 seconds to tell me exactly what you want to the audience to take away from this. Mention if you have an idea, so that it's on the record and we can follow up with it. Keep it short. Let's go, Dickie.
Yeah, thank you very much. For me, if we talk about the just energy transition, it is very localized, meaning that we cannot compare the one that we do in Indonesia to other country, because we have a different condition, and we must do first. We must do what we call the mapping for the mapping problems and the mapping for the stakeholders, and of course. All of the things, all of the implementation that we do must follow the local condition and the local situation. Just energy transition only will be good if then we can be very flexible to implement it among all of the conditions that we face, the real condition, because the issue itself is very flexible and also very localized. So once we do it very strictly, we will fail. So it must be very flexible, and it must be followed with the bigger agenda, which is climate change and sustainable development. So the just energy transition cannot implement all alone as just energy transition. We must do it in a bigger agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dickie. Kelvin, closing words.
Sure. Well, I think I just want to reiterate that actually there will not be one organization, one institution, or one corporate that can have the solution for just energy transition, or for that matter, just transition on its own. I think it's a bigger picture that everybody needs to come together. The fact that we are here today discussing this actually is a very positive sign that there is a certain traction that we all want to get to, right? I would just like to say that from a banking and a financial institution perspective, I think we are here to actually ensure that any transition that's done is smooth. It is not something that that we will just do a very disruptive way of looking at things. So, for example, I just give you an example. We talk about energy, right? Coal. So as a bank, HSBC, we do have this policy that we can't finance new coal. But that doesn't exclude us specifically in our coal policy to say that, if the energy transition out of fossil fuel into renewables, that it's a smooth transition pathway that's approved, and you can justify that, we will actually go into projects like the ETMs that people talk about, the energy transition mechanism that people talk about. We are also involved in the JETP program in Indonesia and Vietnam on this, right? So if there's any doubts and all that, I would just encourage everybody, on this call or listening to this video later, to reach out to your financial institution and see how they can work together and to ensure that any transition is done is smooth and it's inclusive, right? Which is what just energy transition is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Jiang, can you give us just for the record specific policies, programs of GIZ Vietnam as closing words?
Okay, so in GIZ Vietnam, we put the focus on just transition and the private sector engagement in the core of all of our activity, our program in Vietnam. In the past, we do have a specific project only designed to focus on inclusiveness of the social actor of the vulnerable group, and we act on the capacity building program and technical evidence-based advice to the policymaker to change the law and to make the law on legislative promulgation of legislative document to include all of the vulnerable group. And gender sensitive. In the coming time, again, the just transition, the just element, that to make the vulnerable group and group of disadvantaged group to be included and not left behind, to engage the private sector, the SME, more effectively in our program, and to contribute to the better result of the greening the economy towards the net zero as a JETP commitment of Vietnam.
Thank you, Jiang. Excellent. Ilham.
Thank you. Just to echo what the others have been saying, that the just aspect is always the tricky bit in these dialogues, and it leaves so much to be interpreted. But it's not always a bad thing to be flexible, just like Pak Diki said. But it's I guess the most important thing is, I agree, it's to leave no one behind, especially the most vulnerable. And in this case, are the SMEs are the most vulnerable or not? We don't know about that. But one thing from my research is that the informal sectors make up a lot of these SMEs in Indonesia, especially in the coal producing regions that I've researched, and they are sometimes not being accounted for in the formal statistics. So their importance could be overstated or underestimated. We don't know. So to conceptualize what leaving no one behind to more actionable actions is to try to account these informal sectors, these MSMEs, into a formal statistics, so that we can prepare them in the transition, because a transition shouldn't be abrupt, because it will lead to chaos to all sectors. So it won't be abrupt, but if it does, we will come prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilham. Sherman, may I ask for your closing statement?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Dennis. We shape our future and our future shape us. It is not really the lack of technology, the innovation, the program, the mechanism, the creativity to actually figure out ways, to ensure a just energy transition in the process. The way I look at it, if you try to center it in frame, the energy issue as an issue of justice, it boils down to probably this, it is a relational issue, right? So, how might we build then, if it just energy transition, framed it in the context beyond the idea of it being useful in the context of utilitarianism, is the issue of relationality, right? How might we build an ASEAN community, centered and focus of trying to figure out how can a community, build its capacity, and acknowledge that it is our mutual responsibility to do this as a region, and build in the context of, as we transition to much more cleaner energy and renewable energy in the process, is to build better relationships that emphasizes equitable access, social welfare, and adaptability to future changes.
Thank you so much, Sherman. Next up is Sasha.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to close with some sort of advice geared towards policy and decision makers. And just energy transition would require a whole of government approach. So open communication and public engagement is key, also to make sure that there's public trust and ownership for the energy transition, to make sure that the process, the planning process starts early and is inclusive, so it engages with all stakeholders, in particular also SMEs, but also vulnerable groups. There's a long-term vision and commitment in place, and to stick with this timeline, also giving clear planning horizons, focus on regional development, making also sure that policies are tailored to specific needs of specific regions, as well as financial support for affected communities and workers, coupled with a strong social safety net. Thank you from my side. This was very insightful, and happy to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Sasha. Dr. Ambia, you opened the session. Can you close it?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to hear several ongoing initiative at the sub-regional and also local level. Like I learned a lot from the discussion, including like how SME and also the financial sector toward the energy transition. I believe is a right timing, because at the ASEAN level, the direction from the Ministry of Energy of the 10 ASEAN member states also mentioned on the importance of the strengthening the coordination of the several initiatives at the regional and also local level, including including with the several stakeholders, because we talk only at the policymaker side, but we also need to think how to coordinate the efforts from the other stakeholders, like financial institute, private sector, and also SMEs. So I hope several ongoing initiatives also in line, and the implementation is another the key challenging, as mentioned by Ms. Sita at the beginning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. And for the wrap-up words and to close us out, then I hand over to Ashish, the CEO of ASEAN Economic Forum.
Dennis, thank you so much. I hope I'm unmuted. Yes, okay. So, any sort of transitions cannot happen in silos. And as we've seen, just transition is the next stage. I think the most important thing is that to go through a just transition, we need to first go through the digital transformation, and digital transformation at scale. If we are not able to achieve digital transformation and have the 97% of the MSMEs in the sort of the digital arena, transitioning the 3% of the others doesn't really account to a just transition. So what is required, I think, is at the national level and at the regional levels, what we require good sound policies, but we also require participation from the private sector and particularly the MSME representation. And at the local level, we need incentives for communities, so that whatever policies are being framed for digital transformation, they result in incentives for the communities to transform. And once they have transformed, the next stage is then from digital transformation is just transition, because then you have all the communities that move inclusively. What is very important here is to understand that the real resilience of an economy is tested by the strength of its MSMEs. In the uncertain times, in times of global recessions and stress, it is the MSMEs which hold the countries together, and it is important that we help them transition into in a just and inclusive way for the nations to move. I have noted on some very interesting points from some of the earlier speakers. Dicky had mentioned in his opening remarks that how do you talk about just transition when you have people living on top of the coal mines? We had Jiang who spoke about women not getting fairly treated. They don't get loans, they don't have access to capital. They have to balance between homes and they have to balance between businesses. We had Ilham who spoke about creating some sort of environmental certificates for MSMEs, and incentivizing them, creating sectoral or cluster for the MSMEs. We had Shasha who spoke about the MSMEs and the one-way stream where we cannot impose on MSMEs. It has to be participative. The MSMEs need to come and talk about what their needs are, how we can help them put policies in for helping the MSMEs. And we had Kelvin who spoke about decarbonizing of supply chains. He gave examples of Walmart and the trade finance available to green businesses now. Sherman spoke about I think Sherman spoke about continued economic growth, but he also implied that we need to decouple economic growth with just transition. I mean, it has to sort of sorry, not the just transition, decarbonization. And we had very interesting, I think, point of view from all of the speakers. What is most important is from our perspective is that we have limited time now. We have the runway is is 20-30 years, and the action needs to come now. So can we work collectively towards framing certain policies that are actionable at the community level? And I want to leave you all with this thought, so that each one of you understands how you can contribute to this discussion. Thank you so much. Dennis, would you like to say something about your experience of the discussion today?
It was a fascinating discussion with experts in many fields I would not usually encounter. I'm delighted to have met you all. I'm happy that we captured all our thoughts and that they will be fed back to decision makers. So I leave you all with the thought that this is going to take all of us. One person cannot do everything, but everyone can do something. I'm very proud to be in the fight with you. Thank you.